Okay, so let's connect these ideas of type 1 and type 2 errors back to the significance level. So here we're just looking at a picture that connects back to the previous example for cholesterols. And so in that example, there was a healthy population of men, okay, which is the null hypothesis. So the non-interesting thing would be that the person is healthy. And that population, let's assume, is normal, and we know the mean is 180 and the standard deviation is 20. And then we have another population, which is the population of men that are predisposed to heart disease. And from this group, if we use cholesterol as a metric for that, their mean cholesterol level is 300 with a standard deviation of 30. And so sometimes we make errors. Sometimes people just naturally that are healthy might have a higher cholesterol level, and that's not indicative of them having heart disease, and vice versa. Sometimes someone might have a pretty low cholesterol level, but there might be other risk factors that are make them predisposed to heart disease. So a type 1 error in that case was what are the odds that we get a false positive? So in other words, we pick a person from the healthy population, but they have a cholesterol level bigger than this benchmark of 225. So the type 1 error we can represent as how likely is it to pick any one of these people over here that has a cholesterol level bigger than 225 if they were to come from this population. And a type 2 error is kind of the converse of that. So now this would be we are getting a false negative. So in other words, we have a person who is predisposed to heart disease, so they do come from this population, but they have a lower cholesterol. So in other words, what are the odds of picking a person from this population over here that has a cholesterol level which would be deemed healthy, which would be below this 225? So that's the area in turquoise over here. So that's how we can represent the type 1 and the type 2 errors, at least in the context of the previous example. So to kind of just summarize this, type 1 error, that's a false positive. Type 2 error, that's when we get a false negative. And so how we can think about the significance level is the stuff over here. And so the significance level for a hypothesis test we can think of as this is the maximum amount of type 1 error that we're willing to accept. So the significance level really only directly is related to the type 1 error. So we're really only considering type 1 errors when we set the significance level. And we saw some examples where a type 1 error might not be that big of a deal versus when a type 1 error could be an extremely bad deal. So depending on the context, that's why we might choose a 5% significance level instead of a 1% significance level, is by considering how much risk are we willing to accept by making a type 1 error.